Hello, friends, and welcome to the official day one, week one, chapter one of Amy Jo Levine's introduction to the gospel according to John. We made it to this point. So great. You've already heard kind of an introductory video from me. We've already been chatting and getting to know each other a little bit in the Discord. Pretty user friendly. So if you haven't made your way in there yet, no worries. But feel free to come on in to the Discord server, and there we can participate in, kind of meet and greet, relationship building, stuff like this. I'm going to put discussion prompts in there on Wednesdays, etc. So if you can get your way in there, that's a great place to be. And you can already read through the introductions from some other folks who are part of the study. And it's all really good people, many of whom are people that I know. And so it's good people in there, and I'm happy that you're here. This week, we're going to begin chapter one. If you haven't read the introduction yet, you might want to read the introduction just to get a taste for what Amy Jo Levine is all about. But this week, we're going to read chapter one. If you've not even picked up the book yet, you got the whole week to do it. If you haven't finished chapter one, that's okay. We'll start discussing it on Wednesday when we'll have a discussion board prompt. Then on Friday, I'll try to kind of, summarize some of the key themes that came out of our discussion, or any additional kind of learning or opportunities to wonder some about what we're learning in the first chapter. Just as a reminder, this is open to everybody. Everybody's different faith traditions or no faith tradition at all. Maybe you believe in God. Maybe you don't believe in God. Maybe you're just here to learn some of the history. Maybe you're really interested in text analysis. We're here to try to serve all those aims. And for many of us, we might check several of those boxes. We might identify with many of the different identities that I just talked about. But mostly we're here to learn from each other and from Amy Jo Levine. And so if you disagree, share your disagreement. If you're really excited about something, share your excitement about that thing. There's no right or wrong answer here. There's no right or wrong way to do this book study. This is just about building relationship, strengthening some of the ideas that we have, correcting some of the ideas that maybe aren't the best ideas to hold, etc. In chapter one, the major focus is the wedding at Cana. In this scene, in this sign, we'll learn that this is one of the signs, potentially. There is a wedding, a big banquet, a huge feast, and the wine runs out. And so what do we do? And so this is what we wrestle with in chapter one. And what we will discover, based on Amy Jo Levine's commentary, is that things aren't so simple. Does anybody know that Jesus actually transformed the water into wine? Did the servants know? Did the people in charge know that this happened? When exactly did it happen? There's some confusion about this when we closely read the text. And so we'll work our ways through that confusion. And Amy Jo Levine, when remarking on the water to wine, says that she's feeling a little tipsy by all the different questions that are raised. And that is the great thing about the biblical literature that has kept me reading it for years and years and years, is that every time I read the literature, it opens new questions for exploration. And I've done that by wondering, what is the history? Who were the ancient authors? Who composed this text? When was it redacted? What's the reception history? How was it heard in the 1st and 2nd century? How do we hear it today? So every time I read the literature, new questions come to mind. This is why I've got so many commentaries. This is why I just can't stop talking about the Bible, which is funny. But it's what I'm into. And I guess I come by it naturally from my family tradition. Okay. Wedding at Cana, you might feel a little tipsy with all of the questions, but let's talk a little bit about some of the things we should be looking for as we read this chapter together. So we'll begin with the prologue. Seems like a good place to begin. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, or the Word was with God, etc. So we'll unpack that a little bit. We'll understand that Greek word logos actually has a pretty expansive meaning. Within the wisdom literature, we talk about logos sometimes as the personification of wisdom. Sometimes this has feminine characteristics. We'll learn that Philo, who's a philosopher of this same era, thought of logos as the order of the world. We'll also connect logos to light, and we'll understand that in John's gospel, light has a significant role to play. And we'll understand being a light to the nations, being a light to the world. We'll understand potentially Jesus as the light. We'll connect back to Genesis and to one of the creation accounts in Genesis about light. as an act of creation in the world. Well, think about when God began to create the heavens and the earth, the world was pretty chaotic. And so bringing order from the chaos, is that like logos? Is that like what Jesus' signs are seeking to do, to bring order from the chaos? And we can remind ourselves here that we're not interested in the truth of what is fact, but we're interested in the truth that is transcendent. What are the gospel authors seeking to communicate to us? That's one of the ways that I've learned to read the Bible. And maybe it's not the way that you like to read it, but the way that I've come to read the Bible is to say, well, what are the things in here that I can say are true, even if they didn't happen at all? So that comes to me through the Christian theologian Marcus Borg, who says, I don't know if it happened this way or not, but I know that this is true. And it also comes through Jewish interpretive lenses, Jewish interpretive frameworks, framework called Midrash. In the Jewish form of commentary called Midrash, you're plugging some of the holes in the text, you're filling in some of the gaps, you're telling an old story in a new way. That's some of what Midrash is about. And I think the prologue, the opening to John, beyond just its connection to Genesis, beyond just its connection to this idea of logos, I think also is engaging, is participating in this Jewish form of commentary called Midrash. It's telling a familiar story, but it's telling it in a new way. And John's author is telling it in a way that has Jesus at the center. And so we can understand that is the rhetorical aim of the Johannine author. So we'll spend a lot of time in the prologue in chapter 1 before we get into the wedding at Cana. Then we'll spend a lot of time talking about why would there have been huge basins at a wedding feast. So we'll understand that. We'll talk a little bit about ritual purity. So that's going to connect us to some of the first century Jewish practice that certainly was a part of what it would be to attend a wedding. There would be an opportunity for ritual purity. So we'll get into that just a little bit. We'll talk about on the third day, and we'll make a lot of connections to on the third day, to Genesis, to Exodus, to a prophetic account in Hosea. What we'll understand is that miracles happen on the third day, and so then we'll talk about miracles. Is this magic? Is just something that would have a scientific explanation behind it? Is it a sign that is merely symbolic? So you can wrestle with some of those questions along with Amy Jo Levine in the first chapter. But on the third day in the sacred literature is oftentimes when the miracles occur. And so that'll be something for us to think some about. And then we'll talk some about time, about chronos, chronology, chronos, what's on your watch, versus kairos, right? This is a bigger sense of time, a kairos. It's a meaningful, purpose-driven time. And maybe you'll think about times in your life when you've had a kairos moment. That might even be a good thing to ask about on Wednesday. Nudge, nudge, hint, hint. So we'll talk some about chronos time versus kairos time and what that means and how that shows up in the fourth gospel. And then finally, one of the things that we'll do to sort of close everything out is to think about this suffering servant. The idea of the servant, does that connect to the servants at the feast? Does that connect to the servants who is Jesus? Is Jesus a suffering servant? How do servants fit into this entire story? Because I think what Amy Jo Levine is suggesting is that this scene is about much more than a wedding feast. So we'll think about the suffering servant, or what it is to be a servant, period. And then we'll even think, is this anticipating the messianic banquet? So the idea is that in the end time, in Jewish theology and eschatology or eschatological accounts, the idea is that there will be an end time when all nations would be reconciled to the God of Israel. I'm not proposing that is the case. I'm just saying in Jewish theology, all nations become sort of reconciled to the God of Israel or turned toward the God of Israel. And there will be a time of abundance, of nonviolence, of feasting. There will be a messianic banquet at the end times. I love that aspirational goal of imagining a time when there is nonviolence and abundance and peace. May it be so. So that's your introduction to the first chapter, to the wedding at Cana. I can't wait to be back with you Wednesday when we have a prompt for discussion. We have more dialogue in the Discord. I'm just so happy that you're here, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Okay, Adam out.